The crystal champagne flute shattered against marble, sending shards skittering across the Cascade Grand Hotel's lobby floor. Laughter erupted from a cluster of guests in designer suits, their voices echoing off the three-story ceiling. No one moved to clean it. No one apologized. A bellhop appeared within seconds, smiling as he swept up the mess, while the group ordered another round. Hiroshi Tanaka watched this from his place at the back of the check-in line, his worn leather suitcase resting against his shin. He'd been standing there for 23 minutes. The lobby was a temple of excess. Gold fixtures gleamed under chandeliers that probably cost more than most people earn in a year. Leather sofas the color of cognac dotted the space between marble columns. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the Rocky Mountains rose like sentinels, their peaks dusted with early snow. Hiroshi didn't belong here. At least, that's what every passing glance told him. "Sir, you'll need to wait your turn," a young staff member named Brett had told him 15 minutes ago, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the line. Hiroshi had nodded patiently, even though he'd already been waiting. Since then, he'd watched 5 people arrive after him and get served first. A woman in a fur-trimmed coat swept through the entrance, and 2 bellhops nearly collided in their rush to grab her luggage. She didn't acknowledge them, just walked straight to the front desk where a clerk materialized with a warm smile. "Mrs. Vanderbilt, welcome back. Your usual suite is ready." Hiroshi shifted his weight. His feet ached from a long flight from Tokyo, the connection through Denver, the shuttle ride up the mountain. He was 73 years old, and exhaustion pressed against his bones like a physical weight. 3 people had been ahead of him. Now, there was one, a businessman in a tailored suit who kept checking his Rolex. When his turn came, he didn't step forward. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started typing. "Next guest, please," called the receptionist, a woman named Jessica, whose smile was as polished as the desk she stood behind. Hiroshi moved forward. The businessman suddenly looked up. "Oh, I'm ready now." He stepped directly in front of Hiroshi, cutting him off mid-stride. "Sir, I believe this gentleman was—" Jessica started, but the businessman was already speaking. "Reservation under Morrison. I'm late for a conference call." Jessica's smile never faltered. "Of course, Mr. Morrison. One moment." Hiroshi stepped back. He said nothing. What would be the point? Behind him, the line had grown. A couple in matching athleisure wear. A family with 3 children. A young man with a leather jacket and expensive sunglasses pushed up on his head. All of them had arrived after Hiroshi. The businessman finished his check-in and strode toward the elevators without a backward glance. Hiroshi moved forward again. "Next guest," Jessica called, but she was looking past him toward the athletic couple. "Excuse me," Hiroshi said softly. His English was good, though accented. "I've been waiting." Jessica's eyes finally landed on him, and something shifted in her expression. The professional warmth dimmed, like someone had turned down a dial. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes." Under the name Sato. She typed with 2 fingers, her long nails clicking against the keyboard. The seconds stretched. Click, click, click. "I'm not seeing anything under that name." Her tone had gone from warm to bureaucratic. "It should be there. My assistant made the booking 2 weeks ago." More clicking. Jessica's lips pressed into a thin line. "What dates?" "Today. Check in today, 12 nights." "And you said Sato?" "Yes. Sato." The family behind him was getting restless. One of the children started whining. The father checked his watch pointedly. "Sir, I'm not finding any reservation under that name. Are you sure you have the right hotel?" Heat crept up Hiroshi's neck. "Yes, I'm sure. The Cascade Grand Hotel. I have the confirmation." He reached for his phone, his hands suddenly clumsy. Where had he saved it? Email? Messages? His assistant had sent it, but that was before everything fell apart, before Takashi's betrayal, before the lawyers and the board meeting that stripped away Hiroshi's day-to-day control of the company he'd built from nothing. "Sir, there are other guests waiting." Jessica's voice had sharpened. "I know, I am looking. Perhaps you're thinking of a different property? There's the Alpine Lodge about 10 miles down the valley. They're more budget-friendly." The words hung in the air like smoke. Budget-friendly. Translation: more suitable for people like you. Hiroshi's finger finally found the email. Here. The confirmation number is... Is there a problem? A new voice cut through the tension. Smooth, authoritative, with an undertone of impatience. A man in a sharp navy suit approached the desk. His name tag read Richard Blackwell, manager. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked at Jessica, then at Hiroshi, and his expression shifted through a series of microcalculations. This gentleman says he has a reservation, but I can't find it in the system, Jessica explained, her voice taking on a deferential tone. Richard's gaze swept over Hiroshi. The gray jacket with the slightly frayed cuffs, the simple black suitcase with its scuffed corners, the sensible shoes. The assessment took maybe 3 seconds. I see. Richard turned to Hiroshi with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sir, I think there may have been some confusion. The Cascade Grand is quite premium. Our rooms start at $800 per night. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding when the reservation was made. The lobby seemed to contract. Hiroshi was aware of people watching now. The family behind him had gone quiet. The athletic couple had stopped scrolling through their phones. Even the bellhops by the entrance had paused in their duties. There is no misunderstanding, Hiroshi said, fighting to keep his voice steady. I have a reservation. The confirmation number is... I'm sure you believe that, Richard interrupted smoothly. But given that we can't locate anything in our system, and considering the nature of our establishment, I think it would be best if we help you find alternative accommodations. The Alpine Lodge is very nice, very affordable, and I'm sure they'd be happy to. I do not want the Alpine Lodge. I want to check into my room here. Richard's smile thinned. Sir, I'm trying to help you avoid an embarrassing situation. Our suites are extremely expensive, perhaps wherever you thought you'd booked. Are you refusing me service? The question landed like a stone in still water. Richard's jaw tightened. I'm suggesting that there's been a mistake. For everyone's sake. My confirmation number, Hiroshi said, louder now, is CG 47291. IMP. Would you like me to show you the email? Richard didn't look at the phone Hiroshi held out. Instead, he glanced at the growing line of guests, at Jessica's uncertain expression, at the whispers spreading through the lobby like wildfire. Jessica, call security, Richard said quietly. The words hit Hiroshi like a physical blow. Security. As if he were a threat. As if he were. That won't be necessary. The voice came from behind Hiroshi, clear and firm, speaking in Japanese. Everyone turned. A young woman in a café uniform stood 10 feet away, a tray of empty coffee cups balanced on one hand. She couldn't have been more than 25, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and an expression of barely contained anger. She walked forward, her eyes locked on Richard, and repeated in English, "That won't be necessary." Then she turned to Hiroshi and bowed slightly, speaking in perfect, respectful Japanese. "Shitsuri aishimasu. Atsukaresama desu." You must be very tired from your journey. The lobby fell silent. Even the background music seemed to fade. Hiroshi stared at the young woman, his throat suddenly tight. She had spoken to him in his own language, with the proper honorifics, with respect. After an hour of being invisible, someone had finally seen him. "Hi," he managed, his voice rough. "Arigatou gozaimasu." The woman smiled, then switched to English, addressing Richard. "I can help this gentleman. I'm fluent in Japanese. There might be a language barrier causing the confusion." Richard's face flushed. "Maya, you work in the cafe. This isn't your department. I'm off shift." She set the tray down on a nearby table. "And I speak Japanese. Seems relevant. This doesn't concern you, doesn't it?" Maya's voice remained calm, but steel ran through it. "A guest is being treated poorly. That concerns everyone who works here." Jessica cleared her throat. "Maybe we should just check the reservation again. If we have the confirmation number." "Fine." Richard's voice was ice. "Maya, you have 5 minutes. Then I want you out of this lobby." Maya turned back to Hiroshi, speaking Japanese again. "May I help you? What name was the reservation under?" "Sato," Hiroshi replied in Japanese, then added the confirmation number. Maya stepped behind the desk, nudging Jessica aside gently. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Hiroshi watched her face as she searched. Concentration, then confusion, then understanding. "It's not under Sato," she said in Japanese. "Was a reservation made by someone else? An assistant, perhaps?" Hiroshi's mind raced. His assistant, Yuki, had made the booking. But Yuki knew to use the name Sato for this trip. Unless. "Try Tanaka," he said quietly. Maya typed. Her eyes widened. She scrolled down, reading. Then she looked up at Hiroshi, and something shifted in her expression. Not the greed he expected, not the sudden obsequiousness, but something closer to understanding. She switched to English, her voice carrying across the lobby. "Found it. The reservation is under a different name, but the confirmation number matches. 12 Night, Imperial Suite." Richard moved so fast he nearly knocked Jessica over. "Let me see that." Maya turned the screen toward him. Hiroshi watched the manager's face drain of color. "The Imperial Suite?" Jessica whispered. "But that's our most expensive accommodation," Richard finished, his voice strangled. "Top floor. Reserved for heads of state, celebrities, major." He stopped, looking at Hiroshi with new eyes. "I apologize. There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Hiroshi said quietly. "You understood perfectly. You simply made assumptions." The athletic couple behind them shifted uncomfortably. The family had already left the line, moving to a different clerk. Guests throughout the lobby were watching now, some openly, others pretending to examine their phones while listening intently. Richard's professionalism reasserted itself like a mask sliding back into place. "Mr. Tanaka, was it? We're so pleased to have you. Let me personally escort you to your suite." "Jessica," called the bellhop. "No." Hiroshi's voice was soft but final. "I will check in properly, through the normal procedure." Maya glanced at him, reading something in his expression. She nodded and began processing the reservation. "May I see your identification, please?" Hiroshi handed over his passport. Maya scanned it, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She printed the key cards, placed them in a folder along with a welcome packet, and handed everything to him with a small bow. "Your suite is on the 14th floor. The elevators are to your right. If you need anything during your stay, please don't hesitate to call the front desk." She paused, then added in Japanese, "I hope your stay brings you peace." The word struck something deep in Hiroshi's chest. Peace. When had he last felt that? Before Takashi's betrayal? Before the board meeting where his own nephew had presented evidence of Hiroshi's declining capacity, his failure to adapt to modern business practices? Before the lawyers explained that while Hiroshi still owned the company, he'd been outmaneuvered legally, relegated to a figurehead position? "Thank you," he said in Japanese. "What is your name?" "Maya-chan. You lived in Japan." "Osaka. My father was with the State Department. We were there for 7 years, from the time I was 8 until I turned 15. Your Japanese is excellent. You went to local schools?" "Yes. International school would have been easier, but my parents wanted me to really learn the language and culture." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Best decision they ever made. Richard cleared his throat loudly. "Mr. Tanaka, again, I apologize for the confusion. Maya, thank you for your assistance. You can return to your duties now." Maya's smile faded. "Of course." She bowed to Hiroshi once more. "Goyakuri ne zaimasu. Please relax and enjoy your stay." She turned to leave, but Hiroshi spoke. "Miss Chun, a moment, please." She paused, turning back. "You finished your shift, yes? You were carrying empty cups. You were leaving for the day." "Yes, but it's fine. I'm happy I could help." "Why did you help?" Hiroshi asked. "You risked angering your manager. You stepped outside your department. You could have walked past." Maya was quiet for a moment. The lobby waited. "My grandmother used to say you can tell everything about a person by how they treat someone who can't help them in return. I saw someone who needed kindness. That's all. That's all," Hiroshi repeated. He looked at Richard, whose face had gone carefully neutral. "Miss Chun, would you mind waiting in the lobby for a few minutes? I would like to speak with you before you leave." "Sure. Of course." "Maya, you really should be going," Richard said. I'm sure Mr. Tanaka would like to rest after his journey. Mr. Blackwell, Hiroshi said, his voice taking on a different quality now, something harder beneath the quiet tone. I asked Miss Chun to wait. Are you refusing a guest request? Richard's mouth opened, then closed. No, of course not. Maya, wait in the lobby cafe. Hiroshi picked up his suitcase, declined the bellhop who suddenly appeared at his elbow, and walked to the elevators. He could feel the eyes on his back, could hear the whispers starting. By tonight, the story would have spread through the entire staff. The old Japanese man who almost got thrown out, but turned out to have the imperial suite. What they didn't know yet was that this was just the beginning. The elevator doors closed, and Hiroshi allowed himself a long, slow breath. His hands were shaking. The humiliation of the past hour sat like lead in his stomach. But underneath it, something else stirred. Purpose. Clarity. He'd come here to see how his hotels treated guests when no one important was watching. He'd gotten his answer. Now it was time to do something about it. The Imperial Suite was excessive even by luxury hotel standards. 2 bedrooms, a living area larger than most apartments, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. Hiroshi barely glanced at it. He set his suitcase down, splashed water on his face in the marble bathroom, and took the elevator back down. Maya was sitting in the cafe, a cup of tea in front of her, untouched. She stood when she saw him approach. Please sit, Hiroshi said, taking the chair across from her. I want to thank you properly. It was nothing. It was everything. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Tell me about yourself, Miss Chun. What do you do here at the hotel? I work in a cafe mostly. Sometimes I pick up shifts in a restaurant when they need extra servers. And you're how old? 24. You have education beyond high school. Maya's hands tightened around her teacup. 2 years of community college. I had to stop. Money got tight after my dad retired from the service. I've been working, saving up to finish my degree. What would you study? International relations. Maybe translation. I'd love to work at an embassy or for a company that does business internationally. She laughed, but sounded tired. Dreams are expensive, though. Dreams are necessary, Hiroshi said. He studied her for a moment. The cafe uniform that was clean but worn, the practical shoes, the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite serving coffee for a living. How much do you make here? Maya flushed. I shouldn't discuss that with guests. Humor me. 32,000 a year. Plus tips. Sometimes the tips are good. Hiroshi did the math in his head. After taxes, rent, food, she'd be lucky to save a few $1,000s a year. At that rate, finishing her degree would take a decade. Why did you really help me? He asked. The truth. Maya met his eyes. I told you the truth. But if you want more. She took a breath. I've been where you were. Not exactly, but close enough. When I first got back from Japan, I didn't speak English as well anymore. I've been thinking in Japanese for years. People treated me like I was stupid, like I didn't belong. And I couldn't watch it happen to someone else. Hiroshi nodded slowly. Something settled in his chest, a decision crystallizing. Miss Chun, I need to tell you something. But first, I must ask, do you have a few more minutes? I have time. Good. Please come with me. He stood, and Maya followed, confusion crossing her face. They walked back across the lobby. Richard was still at the front desk, speaking in low tones with Jessica. He looked up sharply when he saw them approaching. Mr. Tanaka, is everything satisfactory with your suite? The suite is fine. Please gather your front desk staff. All of them. I need to speak with everyone who is working this afternoon. Richard's professional smile wavered. Sir, I'm not sure that's... Now please. Something in Hiroshi's tone made Richard move. Within 5 minutes, 6 staff members stood in a semicircle near the desk. Jessica, Brett, 2 other clerks, and 2 bellhops who'd been working the entrance. A small crowd of guests had noticed the gathering, hovering at a careful distance. Hiroshi stood before them. Maya slightly behind him, her expression uncertain. My name, Hiroshi said, his voice carrying clearly, is not Sato. That is a name I use for this reservation. My real name is Hiroshi Tanaka. He let the silence stretch. Recognition flickered across Richard's face first, then Jessica's. One of the bellhops went pale. I'm the founder and majority owner of Tanaka Hospitality Group. We own 58 hotels in 12 countries. The Cascade Grand is one of them. I own this hotel. The lobby seemed to stop breathing. I came here anonymously, Hiroshi continued, because I wanted to see something. I wanted to know how my hotels treat guests when they think no one important is watching. I wanted to know if the values I built this company on, respect, dignity, service to all people regardless of their status, if those values still existed. Richard's face had gone from red to white. Mr. Tanaka, I had no idea. That is the point, Mr. Blackwell. You had no idea. And so you treated me as you believe someone like me should be treated. Someone old, someone foreign, someone who didn't look wealthy enough to deserve basic courtesy. Sir, if you had known, you would have treated me well. But that is not hospitality. That is not service. That is transaction. That is calculation. Hiroshi's voice remained calm, but each word landed like a hammer. I stood in line for 23 minutes. 5 people who arrived after me were served first. When I finally reached the desk, I was not greeted with welcome. I was greeted with suspicion. Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it. You could not find my reservation, Hiroshi continued, looking at her directly. That is understandable. Systems fail. Names get confused. But instead of helping me, instead of showing patience or kindness, you questioned whether I belonged here. You suggested I try a budget motel. I was just trying to. Jessica's voice cracked. You were trying to remove an inconvenience. A guest who didn't fit your image of who belongs at the Cascade Grand. Hiroshi turned to Richard. And you, Mr. Blackwell. You looked at me and made a judgment in 3 seconds. You decided I could not afford to be here. You decided to remove me. You called security. That was a misunderstanding. No, that was prejudice. That was cruelty disguised as efficiency. Hiroshi's voice hardened. You failed the most basic test of hospitality. You failed to see a guest as a human being worthy of respect. The gathered crowd had grown. More guests had emerged from the bar, the restaurant, the seating areas. Staff members from other departments stood at the edges, watching. I built Tanaka Hospitality Group with one principle, Hiroshi said, his voice carrying to every corner of the lobby. Every person who walks through our doors deserves dignity. Not because of their wealth. Not because of their status. Because they are human. That is all that should matter. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled staff. Mr. Blackwell, you are terminated effective immediately. Jessica, you are also terminated. Brett, you are suspended pending review. I will be examining the personnel files of everyone who worked the front desk today. Richard's composure shattered. You can't. I've worked here for 12 years. And in 12 years, you learn nothing about what this company stands for. Hiroshi's voice was quiet now, but it cut through Richard's protests. You will be escorted from the property within the hour. Your severance will follow the standard terms outlined in your contract. This is unfair. Jessica's voice rose, tears streaming down her face. We didn't know. How could we know? You didn't need to know who I was, Hiroshi said. You needed to treat every guest with respect. That is the job. That is the only job that matters. He turned away from them, facing Maya, who stood frozen, her face a mixture of shock and something that might have been awe. Miss Chun, Hiroshi said, switching to Japanese. You showed me kindness when you had no reason to do so. You risked your manager's anger. You stepped outside your role. You treated me with dignity when everyone else saw an inconvenience. Maya started, but Hiroshi raised a hand gently. In Japanese, we have a saying, Ichigo, Ichi. Every encounter is unique and precious. Each meeting with another person is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You understood this, even if you did not know the words. He switched back to English, his voice carrying across the lobby. I am creating a new position at Tanaka Hospitality Group, Director of Guest Experience and Cultural Engagement. This person will travel to our properties, training staff on cultural sensitivity, teaching them what true hospitality means, ensuring that no guest, regardless of language, appearance, or background, is ever treated the way I was treated today. Maya's eyes widened. Miss Chun, I am offering you this position. The salary is $85,000 per year. The company will also pay for your education, full tuition for whatever degree you choose to pursue at whatever university will accept you. You can work while you study, or study full-time and join us afterward. Your choice. Maya's hand went to her mouth. I'm Mr. Tanaka. I can't. That's too much. It is not enough, Hiroshi said firmly. What you did today, the kindness you showed, that has no price. But this is what I can offer. This is how I can thank you. And more than that, this is how I can ensure that what you did today, seeing another person's humanity, becomes the standard at every one of my hotels. I don't understand, Maya whispered. I just spoke Japanese. I just tried to help. You did more than that. Hiroshi's voice softened. 3 weeks ago, my nephew, the man I trained, the man I trusted, orchestrated a coup. He used my age against me, my traditional methods, my supposedly outdated values. He convinced the board I was no longer fit to run the company I built. He took everything except my ownership shares. The lobby was utterly silent. I came here broken, Hiroshi continued. I came here wondering if my nephew was right, if kindness was weakness, if respect was obsolete, if the values I built my life on had any place in the modern world. He looked at Maya, and his eyes were bright. Then you spoke to me in my own language. You treated me like I mattered. You reminded me why I built this company. Not for profit, not for success, but because I believe that how we treat each other, especially those who could do nothing for us, that is what defines our humanity. Maya was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. So please, Hiroshi said, accept this position. Help me rebuild what was lost. Help me teach others what you already know, that every person deserves to be seen. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, I accept. The lobby erupted in applause. It started with one person, then spread like wildfire. Guests clapped, staff members joined in. Even some of those who'd witnessed Hiroshi's humiliation earlier now stood applauding, perhaps recognizing their own complicity in their silence. Richard Blackwell stood apart, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. Jessica sobbed into her hands. Brett stared at the floor, his earlier cockiness completely evaporated. Hiroshi turned to face them one last time. I do not take pleasure in this, he said quietly. I take no joy in ending careers. But I will not apologize for demanding basic human decency. I will not apologize for insisting that respect is not negotiable. He addressed the entire lobby now, his voice rising. Effective immediately, all Tanaka hospitality properties will implement new protocols. Mandatory cultural sensitivity training. Anonymous guest experience audits. Zero tolerance for discrimination based on appearance, language, age, or perceived wealth. Any staff member who fails to uphold the dignity of our guests will be removed. But more than policies, Hiroshi continued, I want to rebuild a culture. A culture where kindness is not the exception, but the expectation. Where service means seeing the humanity in every person who walks through our doors. He turned back to Maya. And you will help me do this. You will be my eyes and ears. You will teach others what you showed me today. That respect requires no reason. It simply is. Maya wiped her tears, straightening her shoulders. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Hiroshi smiled. And for the first time since entering the hotel, he felt something close to peace. Because you already understand what took me a lifetime to learn. True hospitality asks nothing in return. It gives because giving is right. The applause had faded, but the atmosphere in the lobby had transformed. Staff members who'd been watching looked at each other differently now. Guests who'd witnessed everything stood with thoughtful expressions, perhaps examining their own behaviors, their own assumptions. An older woman in an elegant dress approached Hiroshi. Mr. Tanaka, I just wanted to say, I saw what happened when you checked in. I should have said something. I should have spoken up. I'm ashamed that I didn't. Hiroshi inclined his head. Thank you for your honesty. Perhaps next time you will find the courage. I will, she promised. I absolutely will. Others approached with similar sentiments. A businessman who'd been in line apologized for his impatience. One of the bellhops who'd ignored Hiroshi earlier asked if he could speak with him privately, his face filled with remorse. Through it all, Maya stood beside Hiroshi, no longer just a cafe worker, but something more, a symbol of what the company could be, what it should have been all along. Finally, security arrived to escort Richard from the building. The former manager maintained his dignity, walking with his head high, but his eyes, when they met Hiroshi's, were filled with bitter understanding. He'd gambled on appearances and lost everything. Jessica left quietly, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Brett slipped away without a word, his bravado completely demolished. When the lobby finally began to return to normal, Hiroshi turned to Maya. "You must have questions." 1,000, she admitted. "But mostly, why me? You could hire anyone. Someone with experience, credentials, a degree." "I could," Hiroshi agreed. "And those things have value. But you have something that cannot be taught. You have instinctive kindness. You have cultural awareness that comes from lived experience, not a textbook. You have courage. You stood up to your manager knowing it might cost you your job." He paused. "And you have something else. Something I lost for a while. You have hope that people can be better." Maya's voice was thick with emotion. "My grandmother, the one I mentioned earlier, she died last year. She always believed in treating everyone with respect. She cleaned houses for a living, and people sometimes treated her terribly. But she never let it make her cruel. She said kindness was a choice we make every single day. She sounds like a wise woman. She would have liked you." Maya smiled through fresh tears. "She would have said you have a good heart. Then I hope I can live up to her expectations." Hiroshi glanced toward the elevators. "I should rest. The day has been long. But tomorrow morning we begin. I want you to meet with our HR director. We'll set up your position officially, discuss your education options, create a timeline for training implementation." "Tomorrow morning," Maya repeated, as if testing the reality of the words. "I'll be here. And Miss Chun, take the rest of today. Call your family. Celebrate. You've earned it." Maya nodded, bowed in the Japanese style, deeper than before, filled with genuine respect, and turned to leave. Then she paused. "Mr. Tanaka, can I ask one more thing?" "Of course. Your nephew, the one who betrayed you. What will you do about him?" Hiroshi was quiet for a long moment. "I will return to the company. I will remind the board who built Tanaka Hospitality Group and why. I will show them that old values are not outdated. They are timeless. And my nephew will learn that loyalty and character matter more than clever strategy." "Good," Maya said fiercely. "He doesn't deserve what you built." "Perhaps not. But this experience taught me something valuable. It showed me where my company had drifted. It revealed cracks in the foundation. In a strange way, his betrayal led me here, to this moment, to you. So perhaps there is purpose even in pain." Maya smiled. "Definitely something my grandmother would have said." After she left, Hiroshi stood alone in the lobby for a moment. The space that had felt so hostile just hours ago now seemed different. Light streamed through the tall windows, painting gold across the marble floors. Guests moved through the space with their luggage and their lives, each one carrying stories he would never know. He thought about Takashi, about the boardroom, about the lawyers and the corporate maneuvering. He thought about the empire he'd built and how easily it could lose its way without constant vigilance. But mostly he thought about Maya's words, spoken in Japanese when no one else would see him as human. "You must be very tired from your journey." Such simple words, such profound impact. Hiroshi took the elevator back to the Imperial Suite. The mountain view spread before him, peaks catching the late afternoon light. He pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. First to his lawyer, outlining his intentions to resume active leadership. Second to the chairman of his board, requesting an emergency meeting. Third to his assistant Yuki, asking her to compile files on every property manager in the Tanaka Hospitality Group. Things are going to change. Starting now. He thought about what he would tell the board. Not about the humiliation, that was personal, but about the lesson. About how a company could drift from its values without anyone noticing. About how profit without principle was poison. About how one act of kindness from a cafe worker had reminded him why he'd started this journey 50 years ago. As the sun set behind the mountains, Hiroshi stood at the window and spoke softly in Japanese, words his own grandmother had taught him decades ago. "Ichigo, ichi. One time, one meeting. Every encounter is sacred. Maya had understood this without knowing the phrase. She'd treated a forgotten moment in a busy lobby as something precious. And in doing so, she'd changed everything. The next morning, the story would spread. By afternoon, news outlets would pick it up. Billionaire hotel owner goes undercover, gets rejected from his own hotel, fires manager. The headlines would focus on the drama, the reversal of fortune, the satisfying justice of it all. But Hiroshi knew the real story was quieter. It was about a young woman who chose kindness when she could have walked past. It was about respect given freely, without expectation of reward. It was about holding on to values, even when the world suggested they were outdated. 3 months later, Maya-chan would walk into her first graduate seminar in international relations at Stanford University, her tuition fully paid. She would carry with her a new title, a new salary, and a new purpose. But more than that, she would carry the knowledge that one small act of kindness can change someone's entire world. Hiroshi would return to active leadership of Tanaka Hospitality Group, his nephew's coup quietly dismantled through a combination of shareholder support and undeniable evidence that the company performed better under its founder's values-driven approach. Every hotel would implement the new protocols and guest satisfaction scores would climb steadily. But none of that had happened yet. For now, there was just this moment, an old man standing in a hotel suite, watching the mountains turn purple in the twilight, feeling hope kindle in his chest like a flame that refused to die. In a lobby far below, the evening shift was beginning. New staff members took their positions at the front desk. And on the wall behind them, a new sign hung in elegant script. Every guest deserves dignity. Every encounter is sacred. Every person matters. Below it, in smaller text, see each other. Respect each other. That is hospitality. The world would keep turning. Guests would keep arriving. Some would be kind, others rude. Some would tip generously, others not at all. But the staff would remember the old Japanese man and the café worker who spoke his language. They would remember what happened when kindness met cruelty and kindness won. And somewhere in the evening bustle, if you listen carefully, you might hear someone greeting a tired traveler in their native tongue. You might see a staff member pause to help when they could have walked past. You might witness small acts of grace that ripple outward like stones thrown into still water. Because that's what kindness does. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply acts, quietly transforming the world one encounter at a time. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt invisible or seen someone else dismissed, consider sharing it. Subscribe to hear more stories about the power of human connection. Comment below about a time someone's kindness changed your perspective. And if you see someone being overlooked today, in a hotel, a restaurant, anywhere, maybe you'll be the one who speaks up. Maybe you'll be the Maya in someone else's story. Because we all have that power. We all can choose to see each other, to respect each other, to treat every encounter as precious. One time, one meeting. Make it count.